Have you ever been judged by what people could see, while your greatest truth remained completely hidden? My wife asked me to meet her for dinner after weeks of growing distant. She said she wanted to save our marriage. I believed her. Instead, she arranged the evening so another man could mock me across the dinner table. She thought I was a husband who had failed. The man sitting beside her believed I was nothing more than an obstacle. Neither of them knew the $50 billion company he proudly managed actually belonged to me. By the time dinner was over, their lives would never be the same again. If you enjoy stories of betrayal, hidden identities, and justice served with dignity, you're gonna love this one.
My name is Malcolm Carter, and this is how the people closest to me confused humility with failure. Growing up, my father taught me that real success was measured by character, not possessions. He used to tell me, never chase the appearance of wealth. Chase a life you can be proud of. I carried those words into adulthood. They shaped every decision I made. 3 years earlier, my world changed. My father became terminally ill. At the time, I was building a successful career in corporate finance. I had opportunities most people would never walk away from. But careers can be rebuilt. Time with a dying parent cannot. So I resigned. For almost a year, I became my father's full-time caregiver. Some people called it foolish. To me, it was simply love. When he passed away, I mourned quietly and tried to rebuild my life. What I didn't know was that my father had been carrying a secret for decades. Long before Sterling Apex Holdings became one of America's largest financial conglomerates, he had quietly become one of its earliest investors. He never sought recognition. He believed anonymity was one of wealth's greatest protections. Every share he owned was held through the Carter Family Trust. Even many senior executives had no idea who the ultimate beneficiaries were. Several weeks after his funeral, the family's attorneys invited me to their office. There, they explained that I had inherited controlling ownership of the trust. That meant I had become the majority shareholder of Sterling Apex Holdings. The company was worth nearly $50 billion. The ownership transition remained confidential while legal formalities were completed. More importantly, I asked that it stay that way. The company already had experienced leadership. Its board of directors continued providing oversight. Its chairman, Calvin Prescott, remained responsible for corporate governance. Its managing director and chief executive officer, Darius Langford, continued running day-to-day operations. Only a handful of people knew who I really was. That suited me perfectly. Money has an unusual way of exposing hearts. When people believe you have nothing, they show you exactly who they are. Sadly, I would soon discover that included my own wife.
When Brielle and I first married, life was simple. We laughed often, we dreamed together. Neither of us cared about expensive things. But over the years, something changed. Success became an image instead of a purpose. Luxury became a measuring stick. Every evening, Brielle scrolled through social media. Private jets, luxury homes, designer handbags, celebrity vacations. Sometimes she'd glance around our modest townhouse before quietly locking her phone. One Saturday morning, she looked through the kitchen window at my aging pickup truck parked outside. She sighed. "Malcolm, don't you ever want more?"
I smiled. I already have everything I need. She looked at me with disappointment.
No. You've just convinced yourself you don't deserve better. Her words stayed with me long after the conversation ended. Not because they hurt,
because they revealed how differently we now define success. As weeks passed, the distance between us quietly grew. She started taking more evening calls. Her phone was never out of reach. Business dinners suddenly became frequent. When I entered a room, conversations often ended. I never accused her of anything. Trust deserves evidence before judgment. One afternoon, my longtime friend, Terrence Hall, asked if we could grab coffee. He looked uncomfortable. "Malcolm, I need to tell you something." I nodded. "I've seen Brielle. She wasn't alone." I stirred my coffee without looking up. "I know." Terrence frowned. "You know?" "I've suspected for weeks." "Why haven't you confronted her?" I looked out the cafe window. Because people eventually reveal themselves. And when they do, I won't have to
Argue with the truth. The next afternoon, while we were both getting ready for work, Brielle paused beside the bedroom door. "Malcolm? I've been thinking." I looked up from fastening my tie. "I don't want us drifting any further apart. Can we have dinner together tonight?" Hope is a strange thing. Even after disappointment, it still whispers. "I'd like that," I replied. A faint smile crossed her face. "I've already made reservations." Then she added, "I need to stop somewhere after work, so just meet me at the restaurant around 7. Don't wait for me." I nodded. "See you tonight." She kissed my cheek before leaving. It was the first affectionate gesture in weeks. As I watched her drive away, I allowed myself to believe perhaps we still had something worth saving. Looking back now, I understand why she wanted to arrive first. She wasn't meeting the restaurant. She was meeting Darius. That evening, I arrived at one of Chicago's finest restaurants.
Crystal chandeliers shimmered above polished marble floors. Soft jazz floated through the room. The hostess smiled politely. "This way, Mr. Carter." As we approached the private dining area, I saw Brielle. She was already seated. Across from her sat a sharply dressed man in an expensive navy suit. The confidence in his posture announced power long before he spoke. Brielle stood. "I'm glad you made it." Her smile felt rehearsed. She turned toward the man. "Malcolm, this is Darius Langford. Our paths crossed through work." Darius rose and offered a firm handshake. "It's good to finally meet you." His smile was polished, practiced, the kind executives wear during difficult negotiations. We sat down. After the waiter poured water, Brielle spoke again. "Darius is the managing director and CEO of Sterling Apex Holdings." He nodded modestly. "I've been fortunate. I get to lead one of the most respected companies in America." Then his eyes settled on my inexpensive jacket. He smiled. "It's amazing how differently life turns out for people. Some of us spend years building world-class organizations." His gaze lingered on me. Others simply learn to live with less. Brielle laughed. Not loudly, just enough. At that moment, I realized this dinner had never been about repairing our marriage. I had been invited to become the evening's entertainment. Just then, the atmosphere inside the restaurant suddenly shifted. The maitre d' hurried toward the entrance. Several staff members immediately straightened their posture.
An elderly gentleman in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit had just walked inside. His presence commanded instant respect. He acknowledged no one, not the executives waiting near the entrance, not the guests who recognized him. His eyes settled on me. Then, without the slightest hesitation, he began walking directly toward our table. Brielle noticed. Darius noticed. Neither of them understood why the chairman of Sterling Apex Holdings, Calvin Prescott, was walking toward a man they believed had accomplished nothing. But before I tell you what happened next, if you're enjoying this story so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps us bring you more powerful stories filled with unforgettable twists, life lessons, and inspiring endings. Thank you for your support. Now, let's get back to the story. Calvin Prescott stopped beside our table. A warm smile spread across his face. Then he looked directly at me and spoke words that turned the entire restaurant
silent. "Good evening, Mr. Carter."
I rose from my chair and extended my hand. "Good evening, Mr. Prescott. It's good to see you." "The pleasure is mine," he replied, shaking my hand warmly. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." I smiled politely. "Not at all." Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Brielle staring at us. The color had drained from her face. She had never seen me greet someone of Calvin Prescott's stature as though we'd known each other for years. Darius cleared his throat. "Mr. Prescott?" Calvin turned toward him. "Oh, good evening, Darius." There was a noticeable difference in his tone. Professional, respectful, but nowhere near as warm as the greeting he had given me. Darius forced a smile. "I wasn't aware you knew Malcolm." Calvin looked genuinely surprised. "I know Mr. Carter very well." For a brief second, silence settled over the table. Brielle looked at me, then back at Calvin, then at Darius. I could almost hear the questions racing through her mind. Darius laughed softly. "Small world. I suppose you've met through one of our charity events." Calvin tilted his head. "No, our relationship goes back much further than that." Darius's smile became strained. "I see." The waiter approached, asking if anyone would like another drink. No one answered. The poor man quietly excused himself. Calvin looked back at me. "I've been trying to reach you this afternoon." I nodded. "I was tied up in meetings." "I figured as much. The revised acquisition documents are ready. I thought you'd want to review them before next week's board meeting." "I appreciate that," I replied. "I'll go through them first thing tomorrow morning." "Excellent." Across the table, Darius frowned. He leaned slightly forward. "I'm sorry. Did you say board meeting?" Calvin looked at him. "Yes. The special board meeting next Thursday." Darius blinked. "I'll be there, of course." Calvin smiled politely. "I'm sure you will. But I was referring to Mr. Carter's review before the meeting." Brielle looked completely lost. She finally spoke. "Malcolm? What board meeting?" I looked at her calmly. "The Sterling Apex board meeting." She laughed nervously. "What would you be doing at a board meeting?" Before I could answer, Darius spoke. "Perhaps Mr. Carter has been invited as an outside consultant."
He chuckled at his own suggestion. No one else laughed. Calvin's expression became serious. "Darius, I'm afraid you're mistaken." Darius frowned. "I'm sorry?" Calvin folded his hands in front of him. "I assumed you already knew." "Knew what?"
For the first time that evening, I felt sorry for him. Not because of what was about to happen, but because I could see the confidence slowly leaving his eyes. Calvin looked from Darius to Brielle, then back to me. Mr. Carter, if you don't mind, I believe this misunderstanding should be cleared up. I nodded. Go ahead. Calvin turned toward Darius. Mr. Langford, you serve this company as its managing director and chief executive officer. Yes. You were appointed by the board to oversee the day-to-day management of Sterling Apex Holdings. Correct. But as you know, the board serves on behalf of the shareholders. Of course. And ultimate authority rests with the owners of the company. Darius nodded impatiently. I understand corporate governance. Calvin smiled slightly. I'm pleased to hear that. Then allow me to properly introduce one of those owners. He extended an open hand toward me. This is Mr. Malcolm Carter, the majority shareholder and beneficial owner of Sterling Apex Holdings through the Carter Family Trust. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. It was as though every sound inside the restaurant had disappeared. Brielle stared at me as if she had never seen me before. Darius blinked repeatedly. Then he laughed. Not because he found it funny, because his mind refused to accept it. No, there must be some mistake. Calvin's voice remained calm. There is no mistake. Darius shook his head. I've served this company for 6 years. I've never met him. That's correct. The ownership structure of the Carter Family Trust has always remained confidential. Only the board, the general counsel, the external auditors, and the family's legal representatives have access to that information. Darius looked at me, then back at Calvin. So, he's... Calvin finished the sentence for him. Your employer does not work in this building. He owns it. Darius slowly lowered himself back into his chair. His hands trembled. Brielle whispered my name. Malcolm. I turned toward her. She looked as though the ground beneath her had disappeared. You never told me. I looked into her eyes. No, I didn't. She struggled to speak. Why? I answered quietly. Because I wanted to know that the people in my life loved Malcolm, not Malcolm's money. A tear rolled down her cheek. I continued. And tonight, I finally got my answer. No one at the table said a word. It wasn't the kind of silence you choose. It was the kind that arrives when the truth leaves everyone with nowhere to hide. I looked at Brielle. She looked back at me as though she was searching for the husband she thought she knew. Finally, she found her voice. Malcolm? I don't understand. If you owned Sterling Apex, why did we live the way we did? I answered honestly. Because I was happy. I didn't need a mansion to feel successful. I didn't need a different car every year to feel important. My father spent his entire life teaching me that money is a tool, not an identity. I intended to honor that lesson. She lowered her eyes. I thought you had given up. I nodded slowly. I know, but you never asked me what my dreams were. You never asked why I left my career. You simply looked at what I owned and decided who I was. Tears rolled freely down her face. I'm so sorry.
I've made the biggest mistake of my life.
Before I could answer, Darius stood. His confidence had vanished. Mr. Carter, I owe you an apology. There is no excuse for how I spoke to you tonight. I judged you without knowing you. I allowed my position to convince me that I was better than someone else. I was wrong. I looked at him for a long moment. I accept your apology. Relief briefly crossed his face. Then I continued. But accepting your apology doesn't erase your conduct. He swallowed hard. I understand. I turned to Calvin Prescott. Mr. Prescott, I don't want tonight to become a public spectacle. The company has governance procedures for a reason. If there were concerns about Mr. Langford's conduct, I expect them to be handled through the board's established processes. Calvin nodded immediately. That's exactly what will happen. There will be no shortcuts, no special treatment. We'll follow our policies. I appreciated that answer. My father had always insisted that no company survives long when rules change depending on who is involved. I wasn't about to dishonor his legacy. Then I turned back to Brielle. She was crying openly now. She reached across the table and gently held my hand. This time, I didn't pull away immediately. I simply looked at the woman I had promised to love for the rest of my life. The woman I had once imagined growing old beside. Malcolm, please forgive me. I know I've hurt you. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking anyway. I love you. I smiled sadly. I wish I could believe that. She looked at me with desperation. I do. I really do. I shook my head. No, Brielle. What you love is the man you discovered tonight. The man you stopped loving was the one who drove an old pickup. The man you stopped respecting was the one who came home every evening to you. The man you laughed at was the same man sitting here now. I haven't changed. The only thing that's changed is what you know about me. She covered her mouth as she cried. Those words hurt me too, but they needed to be said. After a few moments, I continued. I forgave you long before tonight. Her eyes brightened with hope. You did? Yes. I forgave you because I refused to let bitterness control my life. Her voice trembled. Then, can we start over? I gently withdrew my hand. No. The hope disappeared from her face. I've learned something over the past few weeks. Love can survive hardship. It can survive financial struggles. It can survive disappointment. But it cannot survive betrayal that is planned. You didn't make one bad decision. You invited me here believing I was a failure. You sat beside another man while he mocked your husband. You smiled while it happened. I paused. I can forgive that, but I can't build a marriage on it. She bowed her head. I understand. I suppose this is goodbye. I took a deep breath. I think we said goodbye to each other long before we walked into this restaurant. This evening simply allowed us to admit it. I stood up. So did Calvin and Darius. Calvin extended his hand. Mr. Carter, thank you for the grace you've shown tonight. I'll speak with the board first thing tomorrow morning. I shook his hand. I know you will. Then I looked at Darius. He couldn't meet my eyes. I hope you learned something from tonight. He nodded. I already have. I've spent years believing that titles made a man important. I was wrong. You taught me that in one evening. I gave him a respectful nod. I hope you never forget it. Without another word, I walked toward the restaurant's exit. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. People often ask me what happened after that night. The answer is simple. A few days later, Calvin called me. The board had completed a preliminary review and immediately appointed an independent committee to investigate Darius's conduct. Weeks later, Calvin called again. The investigation uncovered several ethical breaches and serious conflicts of interest that had nothing to do with me or Brielle. The board followed the company's governance procedures. After giving Darius every opportunity to respond, they voted to terminate his appointment as managing director and chief executive officer. I respected their decision. Justice should never depend on emotion. It should always depend on facts. As for Brielle, a few weeks later, I signed the divorce papers. It was one of the hardest signatures I have ever written. Despite everything that had happened, I still mourned the marriage we once had. Not because I wanted her back, but because I remembered the woman she used to be. I sincerely prayed that she would find healing and rediscover the values we once shared. Over the months that followed, I became more involved in the affairs of Sterling Apex Holdings. Not because I wanted publicity, quite the opposite. I wanted to protect the company my father had spent decades helping to build. Every major decision I make reminds me of something he once said. Never let money make you think you're better than anyone else. Those words mean even more to me today than they did when I first heard them. If sharing my story has taught me anything, it's this. Never measure someone's worth by the car they drive, the clothes they wear, or the balance in their bank account. Some of the richest people you'll ever meet have very little character, and some of the greatest people you'll ever know will never need to prove their success to anyone. As for me, I still drive that old pickup truck from time to time. Not because I have to, but because every time I sit behind its steering wheel, I'm reminded of the man I chose to become, long before anyone knew what I owned. Before I go, I'd like to ask you something. If you had been sitting in my chair that night, would you have given Brielle another chance? Or would you have walked away as I did? I'd really like to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if my story touched you in any way, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next story. Thank you for spending these moments with me. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, true wealth will always begin with character.